The wheat fields of New Terra stretched golden under twin suns ready for harvest season. Peter walked between the rows with his younger sister Rachel, both carrying baskets for the evening collection. Their parents were in the main settlement, trading goods at the market. Life on the colony was simple, peaceful, exactly what their family had wanted when they left overcrowded Earth 5 years ago. Rachel pointed at the sky. "What's that?" Peter looked up. Dark shapes were descending through the clouds, dozens of them, bigger than any ships he had ever seen. They weren't the usual cargo transports that came once a month. These vessels had sharp angles covered in black metal that seemed to drink the sunlight. Alarms started wailing across the colony. The emergency sirens that had never been used except during drills. Peter grabbed Rachel's hand and started running toward the settlement, but the first explosion stopped them in their tracks. A beam of blue energy struck the central administration building, and the entire structure vanished in a flash of heat and light. The shockwave knocked them both to the ground. When Peter looked up, his ears ringing, he saw things descending from the ships. Not human. They moved on 4 legs with 2 arms, covered in gray armor plating that looked like insect shells. Each one carried weapons that hummed with deadly power. They were sweeping through the streets systematically, herding colonists into groups. "Run to the silos," Peter whispered to Rachel, pulling her toward the grain storage towers at the edge of the fields. They crawled through the wheat, trying to stay low. Behind them, screams echoed across the colony. More explosions. The smell of burning reached them on the wind. They made it to the grain silos and climbed inside through a maintenance hatch. The space was dark, dusty, filled with stored wheat. Peter found a gap in the metal walls where they could see out toward the settlement. What he saw would stay with him forever. The aliens had gathered thousands of colonists in the main square. Administrator Davis stood in front of them, hands raised, trying to communicate. He was speaking into a translator device, his voice amplified across the area. Peter couldn't hear the words, but he could see Davis gesturing, pleading, trying to negotiate. One of the aliens stepped forward. This one was larger, wearing dark robes over its armor. It listened to Davis for a moment, then made a gesture with one clawed hand. The aliens behind it opened fire. Davis disappeared in the blast. Then they turned their weapons on the crowd. Peter clamped his hand over Rachel's mouth to muffle her scream. He held her as they watched their neighbors, their friends, their entire community being slaughtered. The aliens weren't killing everyone, though. After the initial massacre, they started sorting people. Adults were separated from children. The young and healthy were forced onto waiting transport ships. The old and injured were simply executed. Their parents were in that crowd. Peter saw his mother being pushed toward a transport, his father trying to fight his way to her. An alien struck his father with the butt of its weapon and he went down. 2 more aliens dragged him away. Peter never saw him again. The sorting took hours. By the time the aliens finished, thousands of bodies lay in the square. Another 30,000 colonists had been loaded onto the ships. The aliens moved through the settlement looting anything of value, destroying what they didn't take. They burned the crops, demolished the buildings, erased everything that made New Terra a home. One alien stopped near their silo. Peter held Rachel tighter, barely breathing. The creature's head turned slowly, scanning the area. For a horrible moment, Peter thought it would look inside, would find them. But then another alien called out and it moved on. The ships began to leave as the sun set. Peter and Rachel stayed hidden through the night, listening to the sounds of destruction fade into terrible silence. When dawn came, they finally climbed out of the silo. New Terra was gone. The settlement was rubble. The fields were ash. Bodies were everywhere. Peter was 17 years old, and everything he knew had ended in a single day. They found Administrator Davis's backup communication station in a bunker beneath the ruins. Peter had helped maintain it during drills, knew the basic operations. He activated the emergency beacon, sent a distress signal toward Earth. The message was simple. New Terra attacked. Unknown alien force. 12,000 dead. 30,000 captured. Send help. Then he took Rachel's hand and they started walking. Other survivors emerged from hiding places across the ruined colony. Maybe 200 people out of 45,000. They gathered what supplies they could find and waited for rescue. Peter stood at the edge of what used to be the main square, looking at the destruction. Rachel tugged at his sleeve. "Will they come back?" "I don't know," Peter said. But he made himself a promise. If they did come back, if Earth sent help, he would make sure everyone knew what happened here. Someone had to pay for this. Someone had to answer for New Terra. Commander Hayes read the distress signal 3 times, hoping the words would change. They didn't. New Terra had gone silent 6 days ago, but everyone assumed it was a communication malfunction. Equipment failed sometimes in the outer colonies. Nobody expected this. He walked through the corridors of Earth Defense Command in Geneva, the message tablet heavy in his hand. Outside the windows, Earth turned peacefully below, unaware that everything was about to change. Hayes had fought in the border wars 20 years ago, had seen combat, but nothing like what the New Terra survivors described. The council chamber was already full when he arrived. 70 representatives from every major human settlement across 5 star systems sat in curved rows, waiting. President Lin stood at the center podium, her face tired. She had been in meetings for 18 straight hours since the first reports arrived. Commander Hayes will brief us on the situation, Lin said quietly. Hayes activated the holographic display. Images appeared above the chamber, surveillance footage recovered from New Terra's satellites before they were destroyed. The council members watched in silence as the alien ships descended, as the massacre unfolded, as their people were taken. One representative stood up. "Who are they?" "We call them the Collective," said Dr. Reeves, stepping forward. The xenoanthropologist had been studying alien cultures for 30 years, knew more about the galaxy's other inhabitants than anyone alive. They control 47 different species across 200 star systems. They've existed for over 3,000 years. And we didn't know about them? Another representative demanded. "We knew they existed," Reeves explained. "We had minimal contact, considered them distant neighbors. They never showed interest in human space before." She paused, pulling up more data. "We were wrong to ignore them. The Collective doesn't trade, doesn't negotiate. They expand through conquest and forced labor. Every species they encounter either joins them or becomes slaves." "How many of our people did they take?" Lin asked. Hayes pulled up the casualty reports. New Terra lost 12,000 killed, 30,000 captured. But they're not alone. He displayed more locations. The mining colony at Ross 128, the research station orbiting Tau Ceti, the settlement on New Haven, all attacked in the past month. Total casualties, 67,000 dead, 94,000 enslaved. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted questions, demands, accusations. How had this happened? Where was the military? Why hadn't there been warnings? Lin raised her hand for silence. "We need to decide our response." "Response?" A representative from the Mars delegation stood. "They killed our people. They took our families. There's only one response. War," someone else said. "We should try diplomacy first," another voice argued. "Open communication channels, find out what they want, negotiate for the return of our people." Dr. Reeves shook her head. "The Collective doesn't negotiate. In 3,000 years, they've never returned captured populations. To them, mercy is weakness. They've built their entire civilization on the idea that some species are meant to rule and others are meant to serve." Hayes pulled up intelligence reports. "They've conquered over 200 worlds. They've faced resistance before but never organized resistance. Most species they encounter are either too primitive or too pacifist. The Collective has superior numbers and technology. They win through overwhelming force. Then what chance do we have?" someone asked. "They've never fought humans," Hayes said simply. "They don't know what we're capable of." Lin looked around the chamber. "The question before us is simple. Do we fight? Or do we try to coexist with an empire that murders our people?" The vote was unanimous. Every single representative voted for war. Lin nodded slowly. "Then I'm activating Protocol Cerberus, total military mobilization. Every ship, every soldier, every resource we have goes toward one goal, bringing our people home and making sure this never happens again." She turned to Hayes. "I'm promoting you to Fleet Admiral. You'll command the retaliatory forces. I want a plan for striking back within 2 weeks." Hayes saluted. "Yes, Madam President." The council session ended, but the work was just beginning. Across Earth and all human colonies, the mobilization began. Factories that built civilian ships retooled for warship production. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers faster than they could be processed. Humanity was going to war. 3 days later, a transport arrived from New Terra carrying the survivors. Peter stepped off the ship with Rachel, both of them thin, haunted, changed. They were taken to the council chambers to give testimony about what they had witnessed. Peter stood before the representatives and told them everything. He described the attack, the sorting, the murders. He described watching his parents taken. He described the bodies in the square, the burning fields, the systematic destruction of everything his community had built. When he finished, the chamber was silent. "Thank you," Lynn said quietly. "We're going to get them back. All of them. I promise you that." Peter looked at her with eyes that seemed much older than 17. "Don't just get them back," he said. "Make them pay. Make them understand they can't do this to us." Lynn nodded. "We will." After Peter left, she turned to Hayes. "How long until the fleet is ready?" 3 weeks, maybe 4. We're assembling 300 warships, the largest fleet humanity has ever built. "Make it 3 weeks," Lynn said. "Every day we wait is another day our people suffer in those ships." Hayes looked at the star charts showing collective space. It was vast, powerful, ancient. Humanity was young, small, untested against a foe like this. But humans had something the collective didn't understand. Humans knew what it meant to fight for family, for home, for each other. The collective ruled through fear. Humans would show them something more powerful than fear. Humanity would show them fury. The assembly point orbited Jupiter, far from Earth's normal shipping lanes. Admiral Hayes watched through the viewport as warships emerged from jump gates one after another, gathering in formation. 300 vessels, each one carrying crew members who volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a one-way mission. Lieutenant Williams ran training exercises in the hangar bay of the flagship Defiant. Her Marines practiced boarding maneuvers, moving through mock corridors in tight formations. The collective had never faced human boarding tactics before, never experienced close-quarters combat against species from a high-gravity world where every human was stronger, faster, more durable than they expected. "Again!" Williams shouted as a squad cleared a simulated room. "Too slow. In real combat, you'll have 3 seconds before they adapt. Move like your life depends on it, because it does." The Marines reset and ran the drill again. They had been training 18 hours a day for 3 weeks, preparing for every scenario intelligence could imagine. But everyone knew the first real boarding would be chaos, death, and improvisation. In the intelligence section, Technical Officer Rhodes analyzed data recovered from New Terra's satellites. The images showed the collective's ships, their weapons patterns, their formation tactics. Everything suggested they relied on superior firepower and shields, fighting from distance. They didn't expect enemies to close in, to board, to bring the fight into their corridors. "That's their weakness," Rhodes told Hayes during a briefing. "They've never had to defend their ships from inside. Their security is designed to keep slaves contained, not to repel military boarders." Hayes studied the tactical maps. "What about the processing stations? Where do they take captured populations?" Rhodes pulled up a star chart. Intelligence located 3 major facilities. The closest is Station Tartarus, about 6 weeks from here through normal jump routes. It's a massive structure, half station, half prison. They hold captives there while sorting them for labor assignments across collective space. "How many prisoners?" "Estimated 200,000 from various species, including our people from the recent attacks." Hayes felt anger burn cold in his chest. 200,000 people in cages, waiting to be scattered across an empire as slaves. How long to reach Tartarus using uncharted routes? Rhodes checked her calculations. 4 weeks if we go through the dark zones, regions of space that aren't on standard navigation charts. But it's dangerous. No support, no rescue if something goes wrong. "We're not looking for safe," Hayes said. "We're looking for fast and unexpected. Plot the course." The fleet departed Jupiter 3 days later, running silent with all non-essential systems powered down. Instead of the bright plasma drives most ships used, they burned cold fusion engines that were slower but nearly invisible to long-range sensors. The collective's detection systems were designed to spot standard spacecraft. They weren't looking for ships crawling through space like predators stalking prey. Peter had enlisted the day after his testimony, lying about his age, desperate to be part of the response. They assigned him to Williams' unit as a translator, after discovering he had learned some of the collective's trade language from merchants who visited New Terra. He was young, inexperienced, but he had something none of the other Marines had. He knew exactly what they were fighting for. Williams pulled him aside during a training break. "You shouldn't be here, kid. You're 17. I'm 18, Peter lied, and I need to be here." "No, you don't. You could stay on Earth, take care of your sister, process what happened to you." Peter looked at her with those old eyes. "My parents are on that station. My neighbors, my friends. I can't sit on Earth while they suffer." Williams sighed. "All right, but you follow orders, you stay close to me, and you don't do anything stupid trying to be a hero. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." The fleet traveled for 4 weeks through empty space, passing dead systems and unexplored regions where no one had bothered to claim territory. It was lonely out here, dark, far from any help if things went wrong, but Hayes wanted it that way. Every day they traveled in silence was another day the collective didn't know they were coming. Finally, they arrived at the edge of the Tartarus system. The station hung in orbit around a brown dwarf star, a massive structure of black metal and confinement fields. Hundreds of collective ships patrolled the area, but they were relaxed, confident. Nobody attacked collective stations. Nobody was foolish enough to try. Hayes assembled his command staff. "We go in fast and hard. Williams, your boarding teams are our primary objective. Get inside that station, reach the detention levels, free our people. Rhodes, you'll hack their systems, shut down their weapons, open all the locked sections. I want every prisoner on that station freed." "What if they start executing hostages?" someone asked. "They won't have time," Hayes said coldly. "We're not giving them any chances, any warnings, any opportunities to respond. We hit them before they know we're there." But he did send one message, broadcast on all collective frequencies toward the station. "Release them all. This is your only warning." On the collective homeworld of Axis Prime, High Arbiter Quellen listened to the human transmission and laughed. Deathworlders, they called themselves. Primitive creatures from a harsh planet, who thought strength and aggression made them powerful. The collective had crushed 1,000 species like them. He sent a response. "Your people belong to the collective now. Come and die trying to take them if you wish." Hayes heard the response and smiled without humor. "They have no idea what's about to hit them. All ships prepare for combat. Show them what Deathworlders do when you take our people." The human fleet decloaked, 300 warships appearing in the Tartarus system like ghosts materializing from nothing. Alarms blared across every collective vessel. This wasn't possible. Ships couldn't appear from nowhere. Couldn't approach without being detected. But humans had done exactly that. Hayes gave the order that would start the bloodiest day in the collective's 3,000-year history. "All units, engage. Bring our people home." Tartarus Station's commander stared at his displays in disbelief. 300 ships had appeared from nowhere, and they weren't maintaining distance like civilized species. They were burning straight toward the station at maximum acceleration, closing the gap faster than Doctrine said was possible. He opened communications and broadcast a warning: release hostages or face destruction. The humans ignored him. He ordered his ships to open fire, to show these primitives the power of collective weapons. The first volley should have obliterated a dozen human vessels. Instead, the human ships scattered into irregular formations, weaving and rolling in patterns no computer could predict. Collective weapons were designed for long-range precision against ships following standard evasion protocols. They weren't designed for targets that moved like living things, that broke every rule of proper fleet combat. Human missiles struck back, and collective shields flared. Good shields strong enough to absorb the first wave. But then the humans did something unexpected. They kept coming, closing the distance until they were almost touching, firing at point-blank range where shields were weakest. 3 collective destroyers exploded in the first minute of combat. The station commander panicked and gave an order he would regret forever. "Begin executing prisoners," broadcasted on all channels. "Show them the price of this attack." Guards on the detention levels started dragging prisoners from cells. They lined them up in viewing galleries where cameras could capture everything. They raised their weapons. Then Williams and her Marines breached, the hull in 47 different locations. Simultaneously, Peter felt the impact as their boarding pod smashed through Tartarus Station's outer wall. The pod's doors blew open and Williams was already moving, weapon raised, scanning for targets. The Marines flowed out behind her in a formation they had practiced 1,000 times. 2 collective guards stood in the corridor, frozen in surprise. They had never been boarded before, never had enemies inside their own ships. Williams dropped them both before they could raise their weapons. The Marines pushed forward, following the station maps Rhodes had uploaded to their displays. More guards responded, pouring in from side corridors. The fighting was brutal and close, exactly what humans had trained for. Collective soldiers were used to controlling prisoners, not fighting trained combat troops in tight spaces. Their weapons were powerful but designed for range. Human rifles were shorter, more maneuverable, perfect for corridor fighting. Peter followed Williams through the chaos, translating signs and computer displays, helping them navigate toward the detention levels. His hands shook, but his mind was clear. Somewhere in this station were his parents. Somewhere in this station were his neighbors. He pushed the fear down and kept moving. They reached the first detention level and found guards executing prisoners. Williams didn't hesitate. Her squad opened fire, cutting down every guard in the gallery. Peter ran to the prisoners, started opening their restraints. Men, women, children from a dozen different species looked at him in confusion and hope. "We're human military," Peter said in broken collective language. "We're here to free you. Follow us." One prisoner, a woman from New Terra Peter recognized from the market, grabbed his arm. "They have more people on the lower levels. Thousands of them." Williams was already on the radio. "All boarding teams converge on detention levels 3 through 7. We have mass prisoner populations. Rhodes, can you unlock the cells remotely?" Rhodes' voice crackled back. "Working on it. Their security is layered, but I'm through the first firewall. Give me 5 minutes." "We don't have 5 minutes," Williams said, looking at her tactical display. Collective reinforcements were converging on their position from all over the station. Then something unexpected happened. The freed prisoners picked up weapons from the dead guards. The woman from New Terra checked the charge on a rifle and looked at Williams. "Where do you need us?" Williams grinned. "Can you fight?" "We've had months to think about what we'd do if we got the chance." "Yes, we can fight." Word spread through the freed prisoners like wildfire. Humans had come for them. Not just for human prisoners, but for everyone. They were attacking the most secure collective facility in this sector to free slaves. Rhodes got the cell doors open, and 200,000 prisoners flooded into the corridors. The collective guards found themselves facing not just human Marines, but an army of people they had tormented for months or years. People who were done being prisoners, who had nothing left to lose. The station descended into chaos. Prisoners and Marines fought side by side, pushing toward the docking bays. The collective garrison commander watched his orderly prison become a war zone and made a desperate decision. He activated the station's self-destruct sequence. If he couldn't hold Tartarus, he would take everyone with him. Williams' team was 3 levels from the command center when Rhodes detected the countdown. "Admiral, they're going to blow the station. We have 20 minutes. Get to the command center and stop it," Hayes ordered. "All ships prepare to receive evacuees. We're getting everyone off that station." Williams ran, her Marines and Peter right behind her. They fought through 2 checkpoints, losing Marines at each one. Peter saw friends die, saw people he had trained with for weeks cut down by enemy fire. He kept moving because stopping meant everyone died. They breached the command center with 8 minutes left on the countdown. The garrison commander stood at the main console, protected by his elite guard. Williams' squad cut down the guards in a vicious firefight. The commander tried to complete the destruct sequence, but Peter got to him first. Peter had spent months thinking about this moment, about facing the people who took his parents, who destroyed his home. He expected to feel rage, to want revenge. Instead, he felt nothing but cold determination. He knocked the commander away from the console and held him at gunpoint. "Rhodes, shut it down," Williams ordered. "I need his command codes," Rhodes said. Peter put the rifle against the commander's head. "Give her the codes. Now." The commander looked at him with 4 eyes that showed no fear, only contempt. "You're primitives. Children playing at war. The collective will crush your species. We just freed 200,000 of your prisoners," Peter said. "We destroyed 19 of your warships. We breached your most secure station. We're not the ones who should be worried." Williams grabbed the commander and forced him to the console. "Codes, or I let the kid shoot you and we all die together." The commander saw something in Peter's eyes that made him believe the threat. He gave Rhodes the codes. The countdown stopped with 90 seconds remaining. Hayes' voice came over the radio. "Station secure. Begin evacuation. All ships form defensive perimeter. We're not leaving anyone behind." It took 4 hours to evacuate the station. Human ships loaded rescued prisoners, gave them food and water and medical care. Many were too weak to walk, too traumatized to understand they were free. Some didn't believe it until they were safely aboard human vessels, heading away from Tartarus. Peter found his mother in one of the detention levels. She was thin, exhausted, but alive. She held him and wept. His father hadn't survived the first week. Peter grieved but pushed it aside. There would be time for mourning later. The human fleet prepared to jump away, their ships damaged but victorious. Hayes broadcast one final message to the collective leadership on all channels. His voice was cold, absolute, carrying the weight of humanity's fury. "We just freed Tartarus Station. This is your only warning. We're coming for every single one of our people. We're coming for every facility, every prison, every slave ship. And we're freeing everyone you've ever taken. You wanted to see what Deathworlders do when you take our people. Now you know. Expect us." The fleet jumped into darkness, leaving Tartarus Station crippled and empty behind them. 6 months changed everything. The war that began with one desperate raid on Tartarus Station became a campaign that shook the collective to its foundations. Hayes led his fleet from one slave facility to another, liberating prisoners and destroying collective infrastructure wherever they found it. Each victory cost human lives. Ships were lost. Marines died in boarding actions. Every freed facility was paid for in blood. But humans kept coming, kept fighting, driven by something the collective couldn't understand. They called it vengeance. The freed prisoners called it justice. Hayes simply called it necessary. On Axis Prime, the collective council convened an emergency session. High Arbiter Quellen stood before the assembled leadership of 47 species, trying to explain how humans had freed 17 major facilities and liberated over 3 million slaves in half a year. "They're primitives," one council member protested. "Single-world primitives from a backwater system. How are they winning?" "Because they don't fight like civilized species," Quellen said bitterly. "They don't maintain proper formations. They don't follow tactical doctrine. They attack with no regard for their own safety. They board our ships like pirates. They turn our prisoners against us. They're barbaric." "Then respond with overwhelming force," another member demanded. "Send the Armada, the Armada." The collective's ancestral fleet, 2,000 warships accumulated over 3 millennia, never fully deployed because no threat had ever required it. Quellen nodded slowly. "I'm mobilizing the Armada. We'll crush them at their homeworld and end this." On Earth, Dr. Reeves warned President Lin about the escalation. "We're winning battles but losing ourselves. The stories coming back from the fleet, the things our people are doing in the name of liberation. We're becoming what we hate." "They attacked us first," Lin said, though her voice lacked conviction. "They killed our people, took our families, and we've killed 10 times as many of theirs. We've destroyed stations with civilian populations. We've executed garrison commanders without trial. We're not liberators anymore. We're conquerors, calling it justice." Lin looked at the casualty reports. 40,000 human military dead. Collective losses in the hundreds of thousands. Freed prisoners in the millions. The numbers were staggering. The cost beyond anything humanity had faced before. A diplomatic offer arrived from a faction within the collective, species who wanted to break away from the Empire's control. They proposed a ceasefire, peace negotiations, a new order in the galaxy. Lin brought it to Hayes, who refused without hesitation. "We don't stop until every human is home," he said. "Not one person left behind. Even if it means more war? Even if the collective sends everything they have against us? Especially then. We show them that taking our people has consequences they can't survive." Peter stood in the hangar bay of the Defiant, now a sergeant leading his own squad. 6 months of combat had aged him beyond his years. He had scars on his body and worse ones in his mind. He had killed more enemies than he could count, had watched friends die, had done things in dark corridors that he knew would haunt him forever. Rachel had sent him messages from Earth, begging him to come home. Their mother was safe, recovered from her captivity, asking for him. But Peter couldn't leave. Not while other people were still trapped, still suffering in collective prisons. Williams had died 4 months ago during the liberation of a prison world called Gehenna. A collective explosive had collapsed a corridor, and she pushed 3 Marines to safety before the ceiling fell. Peter had taken command of her unit, carried on her mission, tried to lead the way she had taught him. The fleet was preparing for its deepest strike yet. Rhodes had located the collective homeworld, the center of their empire. Axis Prime held the leadership, the military command, the heart of everything the collective had built over 3,000 years. Hayes called his senior officers to a briefing. Intelligence confirms the collective is sending their armada to Earth. 2,000 ships, the largest fleet in known space. They'll reach Earth in 3 weeks. The officers looked at each other. Earth's defense fleet couldn't stop an assault force that size. It would be a massacre. We're splitting the fleet, Hayes continued. Half returns to defend Earth, half continues to Axis Prime. We hit their homeworld while they're attacking ours. That's suicide, someone protested. We have 89 ships capable of making the journey. They have 300 defending Axis Prime, plus planetary shields, plus orbital weapons platforms. We don't need to conquer it, Hayes said. We just need to force them to recall the armada. If Axis Prime is under attack, they'll pull back to defend it. Earth survives and we buy time for a real defense. Captain Song, Hayes' second-in-command, spoke up quietly. Or we all die and Earth falls anyway. Sir, there has to be another way. There isn't. The collective has to learn that attacking humanity has a price, even if the price is everything we have. The fleet split at a nameless system 3 days later. Half the ships jumped back toward Earth, racing to arrive before the armada. The rest continued toward Axis Prime with Admiral Hayes and what remained of the original boarding teams. Peter watched the other ships disappear into jump space. Knowing many friends were on those vessels, knowing he might never see them again, he looked at the faces of his squad, young men and women who had volunteered to attack the most heavily defended world in collective space. Why are we doing this? One of them asked. We freed most of our people months ago. Why keep fighting? Peter thought about that question. He thought about his father dying in a collective prison, about Williams buried in the ruins of Gehenna, about the millions still enslaved, still suffering across an empire built on cruelty. Because someone has to, he said finally. Because if we stop now, they'll do it again to someone else. Because the only way to end this is to finish it. The fleet made its final jump, emerging in orbit around Axis Prime. The planet hung before them, beautiful and terrible, home to 14 billion civilians and the command structure of an empire that had enslaved countless worlds. Hayes looked at the planet and felt the weight of what he was about to do. He thought about his own family, lost years ago in the border wars. He thought about every human taken by the collective. He thought about justice and vengeance and where one ended and the other began. All ships, he broadcast, prepare for combat operations. This is where we make our stand. Peter checked his rifle, gathered his squad, and prepared to board enemy vessels one more time. He was 18 years old, though he felt ancient. He had seen more death than most people saw in a lifetime. And he knew the worst was still ahead. 2 battles began simultaneously across 200 light-years of space. At Earth, 150 human warships faced the collective armada, 2,000 vessels carrying the accumulated military might of an empire. In orbit around Axis Prime, 89 battered human ships confronted 300 defenders and the most powerful planetary shields ever constructed. Peter stood in the boarding pod, watching through view screens as the Defiant fired on collective vessels. The battle was chaos. Weapons fire crossing space in deadly patterns. Human ships fought with desperate courage, but they were outnumbered 3-1. The collective defenders had pulled back into a defensive formation around the planet, daring the humans to break through. Hayes knew this was suicide, but he also knew it didn't matter. The mission wasn't to win. The mission was to make enough noise, cause enough damage that the collective would panic and recall their armada from Earth. All ships, full assault, Hayes ordered. Make them remember this day. The human fleet charged forward, breaking formation, scattering into individual attacks that made no tactical sense but created maximum chaos. Collective commanders tried to coordinate responses, but humans weren't following any doctrine they recognized. Ships broke off, circled back, attacked from unexpected angles. Rhodes worked frantically at her station, trying to hack through the planetary shields. The defenses were layered, redundant, designed to resist anything. But she found a weakness. The shields were powered by 17 ground stations spread across the planet. Take out enough stations and sections of the shield would collapse. Admiral, I can bring down parts of the shield, but you'll need to bombard civilian infrastructure. The power stations are in populated areas. Hayes looked at the planet below. 14 billion people who had nothing to do with military decisions, who were just living their lives under an empire they didn't choose. He thought about New Terra, about civilians killed for no reason except being in the way. This was the moment where he could become exactly what he was fighting against. The moment where justice turned into murder. Before he could answer, a transmission came through from Axis Prime. The Collective Council was broadcasting on all frequencies. High Arbiter Quellen's voice carrying desperation that hadn't been there before. Human fleet, we propose terms for your surrender. Cease your attack immediately and we will release all human prisoners. We will pay reparations for the colonies we attacked. We will withdraw from human space. This war ends now if you stand down. Hayes looked at the tactical display. At Earth, the defense fleet was being overwhelmed. They had minutes, maybe less, before the Armada broke through to the planet. He needed the Collective to recall those ships. He needed them afraid enough, desperate enough to pull back their forces. But the cost was firing on a planet full of civilians. Peter heard the transmission in his boarding pod. He thought about his father, about New Terra, about everything the Collective had taken from him. He thought about revenge, about making them pay. Then he looked at the young Marines around him, kids his own age who had volunteered because they believed humans were better than the Collective. He opened a channel to Admiral Hayes. Sir, this is Sergeant Peter requesting permission to speak. Go ahead. Sergeant? Sir, we came here to rescue our people. We've done that. Most of them are safe now. We came here to stop the Collective from attacking other species. I think we've done that too. They're offering to surrender. They're offering peace. What are we doing now if we keep fighting? Silence on the channel. Hayes looked at the planet below, at the power stations that were his targets, at the cities surrounding them. He looked at the casualty reports, at 40,000 human dead and counting. He thought about Williams dying in a collapsed corridor, about Peter's father executed in a prison, about every human taken by the Collective. Dr. Reeves's voice came through from Earth, transmitted on a time delay from hours ago. Don't become monsters to defeat monsters. The galaxy is watching. They'll remember what humanity does next. Choose wisely. Hayes made his decision. All ships cease fire. Hold positions. He opened a channel to Axis Prime. We accept your terms with conditions. You release every slave, not just humans. You dismantle your empire and free every species you control. You allow independent observers to verify compliance. And your leadership stands trial for crimes against sapient species. Quellen's response came quickly. We will release all slaves. We will pay reparations. But we will not dismantle our empire. We will not stand trial. The Collective has existed for 3,000 years. We will not end because one species challenges us. Then we have no deal, Hayes said coldly. Peter watched the planet below, understanding what would happen next. Hayes would give the order. Human ships would fire on civilian targets. Thousands would die. Maybe millions. All in the name of victory. He thought about Rachel safe on Earth, about his mother recovering from captivity. He thought about the promise he made in the ruins of New Terra, to make someone pay for what happened. Was this what payment looked like? Innocent people dying for their government's crimes? Admiral, Peter said quietly. Permission to speak freely, sir. Granted. You once told me the price of command was making impossible choices. I think this is one of them. We can win this battle by becoming what we hate, or we can show the Collective something they've never seen before. What's that, Sergeant? Mercy, not because they deserve it, but because we're human and that's what separates us from them. Hayes closed his eyes. He thought about his career, about every battle he had fought, every decision he had made. He thought about what kind of species humanity would become if they won this war by slaughtering civilians. Recall all fighters, he ordered. Prepare the fleet for withdrawal. Captain Song looked at him in shock. Sir, we're abandoning the mission? The Armada is still heading for Earth. No, Hayes said. We're changing the mission. Open a channel to the Collective Armada. Full broadcast. He waited until the channel was open, until he knew every ship in both fleets could hear him. This is Admiral Hayes of the Human Defense Force to the Collective Armada en route to Earth. Your homeworld is currently under attack by our strike force. We could destroy your power infrastructure, collapse your shields, bombard your cities. We could kill millions of your people. We're choosing not to. He paused, letting that sink in. We came here for our people. We have them. We came here to show you that attacking humanity has consequences. You've seen those consequences. 17 facilities destroyed. Millions of slaves freed. Your empire fractured. Your military bloodied. You've learned what humans do when you take our people. Another pause. Now learn what humans do when we win. We're withdrawing from Axis Prime. We're offering you one chance at peace. Release every prisoner. Free every slave. Dismantle your slave trade. Do this and we stop fighting. Refuse and we come back. Not to conquer. Not to occupy. But to free every single person you've ever taken. We'll never stop. We'll fight for 100 years if we have to. The choice is yours. At Earth, the Armada commanders received Hayes' message. They looked at each other in confusion. The humans had won. They had the collective homeworld at their mercy. They chose mercy over revenge. That changed everything. The Armada slowed its advance. Communications went back and forth between ships, between commanders and Axis Prime. Arguments erupted. Some wanted to finish what they started. Others saw an opportunity for peace. High Arbiter Quellen watched his empire crumbling around him. The humans had done the impossible. They had shown restraint at the moment of victory. They had proven they were better than the collective, and species across collective space saw that broadcast, saw humans choose mercy, saw the collective leadership exposed as weak, unable to protect even their homeworld. Rebellions started within hours. Subject species rose up demanding freedom. Collective forces fragmented as different species refused to fight for an empire that couldn't protect them. The Armada never reached Earth. It turned back, called home to defend Axis Prime from internal collapse rather than external attack. The war ended not with a final battle, but with disintegration. The collective empire tore itself apart from within, species after species breaking free, claiming independence. 6 months later, Peter stood on New Terra again. The colony was being rebuilt, survivors returning with freed prisoners from across collective space. Rachel ran to greet him, and their mother held them both. They had survived. They were home. Hayes retired, haunted by the 45,000 human dead, by the choices he made, by the price of victory. He never spoke publicly about the war, but he wrote a private journal entry that history would later find. We won because we knew when to stop fighting. That's the hardest victory of all. Dr. Reeves published her research on the war, creating a document that would be studied across the galaxy. The Deathworlder Paradox, How Earth's Children Fight. In it, she explained what made humans dangerous. Not strength or aggression or technology, but the capacity for both extreme violence and profound mercy, the wisdom to choose which one the situation required. President Lin addressed the freed species during a ceremony on Earth. 200 different species attended, former slaves now building their own governments, their own futures. We didn't come to conquer, Lin said. We came to free our people. What you do with your freedom is your choice. But know this, humanity will stand with any species fighting for their right to be free. That's our promise. That's who we are. Peter walked through the rebuilt streets of New Terra with Rachel, past the memorial for those who died, past the market where his parents used to trade. A young alien child approached him, one of the freed prisoners now living on New Terra. Why did you stop? The child asked. You could have destroyed them. You could have made them pay for everything. Peter looked at the child, thinking about that moment in orbit over Axis Prime, thinking about the choice between revenge and mercy. Because we're human, he said finally. We're capable of terrible things when you hurt us, but we're also capable of mercy. That's what makes us dangerous. Not that we can fight, that we can choose when to stop. The child didn't fully understand, but someday they would. Someday everyone would understand why humanity became known across the galaxy not as conquerors or destroyers, but as the species that showed mercy at the moment of ultimate victory. The Deathworlders who brought vengeance, then chose to bring something better.